Hey guys, it's Chandler, and welcome to the Healing Heroes.
I promise you.
I'm Chandler Stroud, an executive, wife, and busy mom of two, who after years of living with anxiety, health struggles, and an unshakable feeling like I should be happier, made a profound discovery that changed everything. Join me on a journey where unexpected paths lead to healing and more happiness. On this show, we'll explore unconventional ways to unlock more joy in your own life with the help of my very own healers and trusted advisors, the Healing Heroes. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Healing Heroes podcast. I'm your host, Chandler, and I am thrilled you've joined us today because this episode is a bit of a departure from our usual Healing Heroes format, and also, in many ways, right here at home. My guest today is Meghan Rabbitt, an award-winning health journalist who has spent the last 20 years helping women understand their bodies and their health. She's the author of a new book, The New Rules of Women's Health, which just released, a book she was invited to write by Maria Shriver, who also happened to write the foreword of Meghan's book. But Meghan isn't here because she's an expert with the answers. Don't get me wrong, she's certainly learned an incredible amount in the process of interviewing experts for this book. But she's mostly here because, like so many women and those of you listening today, she's found herself inside a health crisis that she didn't see coming. One that forced her to confront pain, fear, loss of control, and ultimately a deeper reckoning with her body and with her life. After undergoing a full hysterectomy, Meghan began her own healing journey. One that included Western medicine, psychotherapy, energy healing, intuitive counseling, Reiki, breathwork, and more. Along the way, she did what she's always done best. She asked questions, she listened deeply, and she sought to understand. What struck me most in our initial conversation for this recording was this. Meghan doesn't position herself as an authority. Instead, she spent 3 years interviewing dozens of expert physicians, women's health leaders, and translating their insights into language that women can actually use and trust. That spirit is what connects her work with this show. Very similar to my mission of connecting my own board of advisors, the Healing Heroes, with all of you, this conversation is about helping women feel less alone in their bodies, more informed in their choices, and more empowered to trust themselves. I'm thrilled to have Meghan here to share her personal story with all of you. What that season of her life felt like, what she reached for when things fell apart, and what healing actually looked like for her. We'll also talk about what she learned from writing this book, what most surprised her, and most importantly, what she believes most women need to understand about their health right now. I am eternally grateful to share this conversation with you. But before we dive in, here's a bit more about Meghan and her work. Meghan Rabbitt is an award-winning journalist and author of The New Rules of Women's Health, Your Guide to Thriving at Every Age. She specializes in writing about women's health and wellness, and her work has appeared in many national publications, including Women's Health, Oprah Daily, Prevention, Maria Shriver's Sunday Paper, and more. She's known for translating complex medical and scientific topics into clear, actionable information, and for telling stories that help readers better understand their bodies, their health, and themselves. Meghan, I am so thrilled to have you here today. Thank you for taking the time to be with us.
Thank you so much. I am just absolutely thrilled to be here.
Well, we are thrilled to have you and are so honored because I know we are recording this conversation days before your book release, but when it launches, it will have just happened. And I know you have a lot of big plans for that week. So I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to be here with us.
Of course. I love what you're doing and talking about on this pod. So I'm just, again, thrilled to be here.
Well, thank you for saying that. And as is tradition, when heroines, the healing heroines, join the show, we always like to start with a fun warm up question. So I would love to ask you, Meghan, what is bringing you a small sense of steadiness or joy in your life right now?
Mm. Joy, pickleball. I have caught the pickleball bug.
I love that.
About 2 years ago now, I talked my husband into doing a learn to play pickleball clinic. And he kind of dragged his heels. And now both of us play multiple times a week. We have made so many friends. The way I described it is like you're playing ping pong, but you're standing on the ping pong table. It's so
Cool.
fun.
I love that analogy.
Yeah, so that's bringing me a lot of joy. And I love the steadiness question too, because what I'll share what I'm practicing with you right now to feel more steady,
Love that. Please.
which is my mind tends to go a mile a minute. I'm often in my head, and it's all the chatter of you should do this and where are you in your to-do list, and oh my gosh, this podcast just came out and my eyes look a little red, or whatever, the self-criticism. And what I'm trying to do is quiet that by feeling something in my body. Whether I feel my heart space or my butt cheeks on my chair or like a little stuffiness in my nose, if I can get closer to the physical sensation, I find the chatter quiets a little bit. And so that's what I'm practicing doing right now to stay a little more steady.
I love that. I think the unlock is always finding presence. And what you described is a beautiful way of finding that and a very accessible way of feeling that wherever you are. And I also love the pickleball answer because we often say that, like, as adult modern women, it's so hard to just play for the sake of play's sake. And that's exactly what games like pickleball or tennis or whatever you decide hobby is. Just, it's fun to just play for the sake of play.
Absolutely. You feel like a kid again. You know, when
You
I play
do.
pickleball, I really do feel like I'm 10 years old on the playground again. And it's rare to get that feeling when we're grown-ups.
Yeah, totally. Though I feel like you have a competitive streak in you too.
Oh, girl, you talk to the people I play pickleball with, they would be like, uh-huh, yep, you nailed that.
Love it. Love it. That's great. Well, maybe someday we'll play together. Would love that. Meghan, to get into the meat of our conversation, can you take us back to that time in your life when your health began to unravel and what was happening in your life, both physically and emotionally, to the extent that you're comfortable sharing with our listeners?
Yeah, I most recently, over the course of a few years, late 30s into my early 40s, I really started experiencing some menstrual health symptoms that, to be quite honest with you, I just powered through. So I was always regular, quote unquote. Like I got my period every 28 days, like clockwork. And because of that, I kind of ignored everything else. Meanwhile, my periods were very heavy to the point where I was always borderline and then crossed the border of anemia. And iron supplements, as any woman who's ever had to take iron supplements probably can attest to, they're really challenging to take and actually get your iron levels up. They can do a number on your system. Multiple doctors were like, I know we don't really have a great alternative for you. And I was feeling dizzy. And those first 1, 2, 3 days of my period were like, as a doctor I recently interviewed about menstrual health said, like crime scene periods where you stand up and you're like, what just happened? You know? And I just powered through, you know, I just powered through and ignored it and didn't even bring up these symptoms with my doctors, with my healers, you know, whether it was my conventional, like gynecologist, primary care physician, or even, you know, I live in Boulder, Colorado, where I have a posse of alternative healers, integrative healers, and I didn't bring it up with them either. You know, I really ignored my own body symptoms. And yeah, and really the crisis moment came when I was passing clots, pretty big clots. I couldn't roll over in bed without getting dizzy. There's one dizzy spell I remember, and that's the low iron, right? One dizzy spell I remember where I mean, the room was just spinning. And as anyone who has dealt with vertigo or like an intense case of that can also relate to, I'm sure, it is terrifying. You know, it is really, really terrifying. And so I finally brought these symptoms to a gynecologist and it was a nurse practitioner who I brought this up to. And even when I think back, I just played it off as no big deal. Like, oh, I'm sure it's perimenopause. And, she was like, well, how big are the clots that you're passing? And she just asked questions that helped me unravel the story a little bit more. And sure enough, she said, who knows, but let's schedule a vaginal ultrasound. So I did that within days. And the next thing I know, I'm laying on that ultrasound table and the tech was like, you have fibroids, uterine fibroids everywhere they can be, every type you can have. And like, it was almost like, when you're in one of those medical situations and you can tell on someone's face that like, they're surprised at what they're looking at. That's what was happening. And so, I got a diagnosis of fibroids. Again, a super common diagnosis for a lot of women. And that started a whole other few years of me trying to really hold on to the reality of that diagnosis and then wrap my head around it and also grapple with really this feeling that my body had betrayed me. Which is sad. It's a hard feeling.
Yeah, I can imagine. How long would you say that you lived with the fibroids until you had to have a more serious procedure done?
Yeah. So I thought I could just deal with them. And multiple doctors I saw were like, look, you've got a few options. Some of the options for treating fibroids weren't going to necessarily work for me because I had so many and they were in every place they could be. And so like for one example is an IUD. A lot of women who have fibroids, you might have an IUD placed to at least control the bleeding. And that wasn't an option for me. My sense is that there was nowhere to put the IUD. Like that's how full of fibroids my uterus was. And so I had conversations with my doctors who said, they will shrink after menopause. And the average age of menopause is 51, 52. And so I was like 41 at the time. And so I was like, okay, 10 years. Can I just deal with this? And I really grappled with it and I didn't want surgery. So multiple doctors had said the only option for my case of fibroids would be a hysterectomy. And that felt like a big surgery. I didn't really want it. And I just figured I could try to power through. And then finally, I just, after so much fatigue, more symptoms, really, a week of hemorrhaging, as I liked to call it, kind of in a joking way, but there was nothing funny about it. It was really debilitating, life altering for a good few days, a week of just dreading how heavy my cycle was going to be. I finally said, okay, I think I really need to get serious about a hysterectomy. And so I interviewed surgeons. I put it out to my people here in where I live and sort of asked everyone, who has had this procedure or who knows someone who's had a hysterectomy, who was their surgeon. So I got some really good recommendations there. And then I went to 3 different surgeons before I landed on one that felt like a really good fit for me and who I felt like, you know what, you're my surgeon for this really important procedure. And I feel like I'm really passionate now about helping women understand that they can do that. I understand there's a lot of privilege that comes with this. I live in an area and have insurance and the means to be able to get multiple opinions. I know not everyone is that lucky, but I think if you are in a position where you can get a second, a third, maybe even a fourth opinion and really make sure you're landing on the person who feels like the best fit for you, it's worth the time and energy and, disappointment, because I left one appointment and I remember just being like, oh my gosh, like that is the last person I want to do this procedure. It just felt rushed and I didn't feel seen. I didn't feel like she was really listening to me. And then I gave her no impression that I was like ready to go for this. And as I was leaving, she was like, okay, so let's get that scheduled. And I was like, no, like I'm going to wait on that. So really important to have the people you feel confident in working with you.
We say that all the time on the show, picking your tribe of healers and support system is maybe the most critical element to going on any sort of healing journey of your own.
Yeah, absolutely. I was really hoping to have it done laparoscopically, which he was able to do, which is pretty remarkable. When I first woke up after the procedure, I was like, he showed me pictures of my internal organs, which is kind of this really cool, as anyone who's had it, they put a camera in your belly button, basically, a hole right above your belly button. And you can see your liver and your ovaries and the uterus, and they take pictures of everything. And when I came out of surgery and I woke up, he was like, you had a really big uterus. I think it was even bigger than he was anticipating. So due to the fibroids, and I actually had another condition called adenomyosis. Most of us have heard of the term endometriosis, which is when the lining of the uterus grows outside the uterus. Adenomyosis is when the lining of the uterus actually grows in the wall of the uterus. And so it doesn't always create as many problems in terms of the lining growing on other organs. However, it does create a lot of inflammation and it can cause more symptoms. So in addition to the fibroids, I also had this other condition I had no idea I had, which was likely creating the crime scene periods. And he said the average uterus should weigh 70 grams, 70. Mine weighed almost 500. And so the fact that he was able to do it laparoscopically, I just blew me away. And I just felt so grateful. I think I said thank you like a million times when I was waking up from that surgery. And the healing process from that was intense. And I had a really great experience. So I had what's called a total hysterectomy with bilateral salpingectomy, which is a whole bunch of medical jargon to say they removed my uterus and my cervix, as well as both fallopian tubes. They were able to keep my ovaries, which is really great news for me because I was 45 when I had this procedure and I was able to not go into menopause immediately. So I didn't experience a lot of the symptoms of menopause that can come on board right away if your ovaries are also removed in a hysterectomy. So,
Got it.
yeah. So when I woke up, I had a really great healing, experience in the immediate aftermath of the hysterectomy in that I was up, I was moving, I walked out of the hospital. Well, no, I took a wheelchair out of the hospital because they make you, but I was walking around the floor within a couple hours of waking up. And so
Wow.
really, really positive experience. Now, partly that's because they were able to do it laparoscopically. So I didn't have an overnight stay. But I think what I would want any woman listening who maybe is considering hysterectomy or that's been tossed around as a possibility, because it is a very common surgery, like second only behind C-sections in terms of how common it is in our country. There's a lot of fear around it. There's a lot of fear about it. It's a big surgery. And I had a lot of fear around it before I had it. And I think if I could talk to myself before I had the hysterectomy, it would be like, of course you have fear. Like that's a really normal emotion based on the, bigness of what's about to happen. And it's going to be okay. It was a really smooth process for me. I think in a lot of ways, I was really healthy going in. I was doing my work, eating pretty well, moving my body, doubling down on my healing practices, I go to a Rolfer who I absolutely love, who is working not only on my fascia, but also with me emotionally, like the body keeps the score, right?
We love that book here.
Yeah. And so I think, my Rolfer was really like, I had my people who are helping me prep for this surgery. And so I'd also say to your listeners, like no matter what procedure it is, when you double down on those things to help shore you up, I think it helps. I think it has to help as you're coming through a major, procedure like that and in the healing days afterwards.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's such an important thing that you realized both before and retrospectively as you think about kind of what really helped you through. It's almost like you just feel less alone. Like you really have a support system holding your hand going in and on the other side.
Yeah.
They kind of look at the whole person versus just pieces of you.
Absolutely. And I think, something else that you just said that reminded me of what really helped was talking to other women who'd had a hysterectomy.
Mm.
So if you actually start sharing that you've had this procedure, or you're about to, many women will say, "Oh, I had that. Oh, yeah, I went through that a few years ago." Or a good friend of mine had one a few months after me. And someone else told me that she says when you meet other people who've had a hysterectomy, we're hyster sisters now. And I think when you can find your people who have faced similar struggles to you and just have been in it, man, if you can really lean on those people, it makes it feel so normalizing as well. It just makes you feel supported, but also like, oh, like I've got this.
Yeah. Yeah. That's consistent with a lot of the other advice we've gotten from heroines on the show who have been through their own sets of challenges, is that finding a community of women who have experienced and have the wisdom of being on the other side can really make or break your ability to kind of stay calm and confident going through a process like that.
Absolutely. And it's interesting with hysterectomy in particular. I interviewed a doctor once who called it like an a la carte surgery. You can kind of have whatever organs, multiple different types of organs removed. So in some cases, you might just have the uterus removed, but not the cervix and not the tubes. So they mostly take the tubes these days. Because an interesting fact, actually, most cases of ovarian cancer start in the tubes. So,
Really?
yeah, which we know now, thankfully, because thank goodness for science and research. And so that's become pretty common. And it's something that you should definitely talk to your doctor about when it comes to your a la carte choices for hysterectomy. But again, like I said before, it could have been like, had they found something on my ovaries, they probably would have taken those. And so I think it's important to understand that just like you can have multiple different organs removed in hysterectomy, you can also have different types of surgery. So my friend who had a hysterectomy, her uterus was even bigger than mine, with even more fibroids and bigger fibroids, and they couldn't do it laparoscopically. They had to do an abdominal cut to take her uterus and tubes out. And so I think just like that, we all go through different experiences in the healing
Yeah.
process as well. And I think being gentle with ourselves and understanding that how I heal from surgery is going to look really different than how my friend did and how my neighbor did and how my mom did is also really important to remember. I think, again, so that we can be really in our own experience rather than placing all these shoulds on ourselves, which can be tempting to do.
Totally. I always say, stop shooting yourself all the time.
Totally. Totally.
It's so true. Well, I'm so sorry you went through all of that. But what I will tell you listening is I was struck by how incredible you were, or how you knew to advocate for yourself from the start, not just with finding the right partner and a physician, and surgeon, but also getting that support system in place, asking the questions, knowing and listening to that intuition that told you you didn't want to just push through with the fibroids for the rest of your life. You wanted to do something more significant. And I think those three actions in themselves can be really tough for women to kind of to decide that they want to move forward and build that support system or interview doctors, because that's obviously time. And I think it's just really incredible how ahead of your time you were in handling a lot of that.
Honestly, I think working on the book that I just wrote really helped me. And it really, my own experience became, even more a part of my mission and my North Star as I was interviewing doctors and putting together this book, because I want all women to feel like they have the tools they need to advocate for themselves, to feel confident advocating for themselves. And I think something I know that trips me up sometimes is when I just don't feel like I can speak confidently about something, then I defer, I hand over my power and I say, well, you know more, you know better. It's, here, you tell me what to do. Whereas I think, in this book, it goes beyond the gynecologic, sexual health, female topics, in that it also talks about heart health and immune health and brain health. And in all of those areas, partly we're unable to have these great conversations with our doctors often because we just don't have a good baseline education about our bodies and the various systems in our bodies. And I heard a beautiful phrase the other day, which is, doctors know bodies, but we know our bodies. And I think the more we understand and can speak the language and have words to speak the language with our doctors about our bodies, the more we can remember, oh, I know my body and I'm going to tell you what I'm going through. And so it really was a process for me, in terms of learning more about, even just things about my uterus and my ovaries and my tubes that I was just like, how have I lived in this body for 40 some odd years? And I have no idea that, about multiple aspects of my reproductive organs. But once I learned, I was able to have those conversations with more confidence. And I think that's what helped give me helped me feel empowered to interview multiple doctors, ask questions, to land on the perfect surgeon for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I can see how it would. I want to ask a couple questions about the healing journey, bouncing back from such a big procedure. And then I have a whole host of questions about your process for the book, and I'm excited to get there. But I'm curious first, when everything felt really overwhelming, or on the other side of this, as you were healing your body, mind, spirit, what did you instinctively reach for to feel better?
Yeah, I think, in the immediate days after, my instinct was to just stay close to myself. I still had a lot of work to do, but I took 2 solid weeks off. I cleared my calendar. It sounds really silly, but I bought myself an electric blanket and it it was one of the best things that I did because it was winter when I had this surgery, and I would just get on the couch, I would get under my electric blanket, and I would read, I'd watch TV. I just leaned into doing whatever I felt like doing in the moment, and I really think it helped my physical healing because I think it was just my body. I moved as much as I could, like walking post-op was going to be the best thing I could do to speed the recovery. And so it's not like all I did was sit under that electric blanket. I have a picture of my husband, he would help me put my hiking boots on, and then the yak tracks on the bottom, just because it was snowy and I didn't want to fall post-op, and so I would take walks, but really just leaning into rest, which I think is something as women we have a hard time doing. It makes me so sad that that's the truth, but it's, when you have to deeply rest, you remember how good it feels and how much it's needed. And then I think after that, my instinct really was to talk to my healers, not my surgeon, not the post-op 6-week post-op appointment. That was great, but I wanted to really talk to my healers and see my healers who were going to help me tackle the emotional aspects of healing. And I think, with the hysterectomy and even the way I've described it right now, it was a very physical thing. It was very physical symptoms of heavy periods and, other symptoms due to the fibroids. It was a very physical, we're going to remove your uterus and your cervix laparoscopically. There were 5 little holes in my stomach little scars to prove the physical nature of that. But I think there was so much emotional work I had to do afterwards as well, in terms of, wow, like that was a pretty stressful buildup to a big surgery. And then the come down off of that was also pretty big and emotional, and really grappling with like what it means as a woman to no longer have your womb, the seat of creativity and womanhood, and I think that's when I really leaned into my therapy. My therapist, psychotherapist, is just remarkable in helping me climb into my body and really feel the emotional space of where my uterus was. And that was really transformative work. And then when I was cleared for pelvic floor PT, I was really lucky in that my pelvic floor physical therapist didn't just do physical work. She did a lot of energetic healing as well. So the whole first half hour of my pelvic floor PT appointments was just Reiki. It was her hands hovering over my body, trying to understand what my body was telling her. And I'll never forget the first session. It was all actually not focused on my pelvic floor muscles, but rather my diaphragm. Because after that surgery, you get in a laparoscopic hysterectomy, your belly gets blown up with gas, and everything kind of, shifts around. And my diaphragm wasn't actually moving fully down when I was taking a deep breath after that surgery. And so her energetic work, I can feel my whole body just relax, even just in the memory of that, because it's just, it really felt like transformative, in me getting used to, both physically and emotionally, this new orientation of different insides.
I love this so much for so many reasons, but I think it's such a beautiful example of how Western medicine can be supported by a lot of these practices. And then it does go so far beyond just the physical remnants of what's left behind after a procedure like this, right? And I think what you're describing, is so moving to me because you said at the start that you felt like your body had betrayed you when you got this diagnosis. And what I'm hearing is you coming back into your body and learning how to not just forgive it, but love it again.
Totally. Totally. And also, again, in that energetic work, I did a lot of thanking my uterus for all that it did for me until the hysterectomy. Now, I don't have children, so it was interesting in that gratitude didn't come with what I think a lot of women would feel, which is like, oh my gosh, you were home to life, I've never been pregnant. However, man, like I had a regular cycle all my life, every 28 days, giving me this guide to my body and this external cue of what was happening with my hormones. And I had a lot of gratitude towards that. I had just a lot of, feelings of gratitude towards how my uterus connected to other parts of my body, and for being there as possibility for me,
Yeah.
and giving that space and naming that gratitude, I think really did help me a lot in the healing process.
I'm sure it did. That's a very powerful energy that you cultivated in practicing that kind of gratitude.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think as women, we can be hard on ourselves when it comes to our cycle. I don't know any woman who really loves their period, like,
Nope.
as much as it is this, sometimes even when my period got really heavy, I was like, well, at least it's this like detox. I'm flushing things out of my system. But like, that was just like a sugar coating. Like, I did not enjoy it, and I think there's a way that all of us, no matter what's happening with us, can just kind of climb into our bodies and just be like, oh, thank you. Like, thank you, ovaries. Thank you, uterus. Thank you, heart, brain. Like, butt cheeks, like whatever it is, I think it's really important because we just roll through this world so outward facing all the time and in our heads and just plowing through. And I think to take those moments to really climb in and be like, what's happening for me right now? I wonder actually if I was in a more steady practice of doing that in my younger years, if I would have actually clued into those symptoms a little earlier and not had to suffer for so many years.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a fair question. I think it's so hard for us as women to be present in our bodies. And I think moments like this can be really life-changing in learning, to your point, how to crawl back in there and be grateful for how it served you up until this point and continues to serve you. Meghan, what does healing look like for you now? Not as a destination necessarily, but as you think about the way you're living your life today.
First and foremost, it's making time for myself. I think it's making sure that I am nourishing my body, that I'm moving my body. I'm a big fan of strength training right now. We're hearing a lot about it, but wow, it feels like it puts me in my body personally. It works me in a way that just helps me climb in. I still see my rolfer who, as she's working on the fascia and things are reorganizing, we're talking about what's happening for me emotionally. And I see that rolfing massage as such a key part of my healing, because it gives me I think those practices are really cool because it's physical and emotional at the same time. And it's like, as she gets deep into some of those, muscles or fascia, I might have like memories come up, and because it's such a safe space, I'm able to share them, and work through them, I think, in a way that I otherwise wouldn't be able to. And certainly therapy. I mean, it has been a truly transformative experience for me. After 7 years of working with this therapist, I feel like experiences in my life are just different. I'm changed in a way that I feel proud of. And so that feels like a really important part of my healing journey, not just from the hysterectomy, but helping me heal on this path that I'm on this go round.
I share so much of that sentiment with you. I supplement with lots of different things, as I'm sure you do, but I think the therapy has been really instrumental in moving me forward and helping me understand my life and my power better, coupled with the somatic work. Myofascial release is how I've started, but I tried the Rolfing as well. Love Rolfing. And then the last piece, which I think you touched on, in how you climb into your body and in the breath work and the meditation and in the gratitude, is the spirituality aspect, the knowing that like you're supported in this. There's some larger force at play that is, holding you in this pain and in this healing. And I love hearing another woman talk about her path and her journey through that lens of just, it came from everywhere, right? But you were intentional about what you were looking for and what you needed to support you.
Yeah. And I think too, you can be really intentional about what you need and what's going to support you. And I think it's so important to stay open then, and I think that was a big learning for me in terms of, you can't always control how your healing is going to go, what's going to happen to you, what's going to need to, I'm thinking a lot about that now at 46. I'm about to turn 47. And I don't know if it's that middle age sort of hits and you're like, oh, I'm not so invincible anymore. Things start happening to the people we love, and diagnoses happen and scares happen. And I think it's the more we can lean into these healing practices and remember that as we go through these really hard, scary times, remember that we can shore ourselves up with what's worked in the past. Yeah, the better off we'll be, It's, as my therapist would say, it's God's work. It is God's work. It is pure love when you have to lean into fear and let yourself sit in that space. That is hard work.
Meghan, you've lived this all from the inside, and then you spent 3 years listening to experts across the women's health landscape for your book, The New Rules of Women's Health. I'd love to talk about what happened when you brought your own world of healing together with this research world that you dove so deeply into in the process of writing this book. When Maria Shriver asked you to write this book, what did you feel called to say within it and to the women that you knew would eventually read it?
Yeah, it was such a cool assignment. As a journalist, I take assignments all the time, and I'm sitting in LA with Maria Shriver, who says, Meghan, I want you to write a women's health manifesto. And I think initially and immediately I was just like, okay, Maria Shriver, like, I got this. And then I went back to my desk and was like, oh my goodness, like, this is a project, because when you think about women's health and a woman's body, and what Maria wanted me to do was not just cover the typical, what sexual health, reproductive health, breast health, what we now refer to as bikini medicine. She wanted me to cover the female brain and heart and lifestyle habits like exercise and nutrition and sleep, but through the lens of what women specifically need to know. It was really daunting. I'm not going to lie. Like, it was really like, wow. And, I think I live in Colorado. I do a lot of hiking. And I really, as I started on this project, I really thought about it as a climb, and sometimes in that climb, you just have to plot your course. And that was what the outlining was. And then at multiple points in this juncture, I was just, okay, I got to put my head down and just right, left, focus on my feet, focus on the small steps forward. At multiple points, I wanted to stop and say, this is too big. I can't do this. And then I kept going. And so, yeah, it was a tall task, but one I felt really honored to be working on.
I love that you call it a manifesto and not a book, because that to me is exactly what it sounds like based on our earlier conversation together. You mentioned interviewing dozens of experts. Was there anything that you repeatedly heard that women are being told or maybe aren't being told clearly enough?
Yeah. I mean, I think overall, women report, and even our doctors and the people who take care of us report, that too many women are not feeling seen and heard. And so I think that was an overall trend of like, wow, like we as women, if you feel dismissed, if you have ever felt unseen, if you have ever walked away from an interaction with a healthcare provider and just felt super disappointed and like you weren't heard, like, you're normal, join the club. Not that makes it better, but I think knowing that you're not the anomaly can be actually really supportive. And yeah, I think, when it comes to what surprised me throughout every aspect of this book, every chapter, there was something that absolutely shocked me, and really then made me a little mad that we are not taught these things, everything from, research in an organ as important as the clitoris, for example, was all based on cow research, not human. And so finally, just a few years ago, a researcher said, we need to be looking at a human clitoris to understand how many nerve endings are in here, so something like that, just shocking. I feel like when I interviewed a doctor about breast health, she said, doctors aren't actually talking to us about our lifetime risk of breast cancer. We think that when we get a mammogram, we're on top of it. We've got our breast cancer prevention covered. Actually, mammograms and it's a screening tool, right? What we should be doing is a breast cancer risk assessment. And that's something we can do ourselves online. Olivia Munn was talking a lot about this in her own journey fairly recently, where her doctor said, let's do a lifetime risk assessment. It's called the Tyrer-Cuzick test, and you can all take it online. And her doctor.
We'll link that in the resources, by the way.
Fantastic. I feel really passionate about if every woman could take this and bring the results to your doctor. It just helps you have a better conversation about, look, is an annual mammogram good enough for me, or do I need additional screening? And so I think something like that. After I heard that, I took the test myself, and I had never had a doctor ask me what my score was, or do the test with me to show me my score. And sure enough, for me, it led to me needing my first breast MRI recently, and so that's shocking, and so at every turn, I really did feel like, gosh, we need a better education about our bodies. It's time. And because we don't get that, we have to take matters into our own hands.
It would be great if we could flip the script on that, though. And I'm not saying that women shouldn't be empowered or feel like, they can advocate for themselves, but it would be great to be met halfway with that education on the part of the medical system as well.
100%. Yep. And I think if you look, the thing is, every doctor I interviewed said she meets with, and they're all female doctors, researchers, clinicians in the book. I felt really passionate about really having the female expert voice. There's 132 all female experts in this book.
Wow.
Yeah.
132 female experts.
Yes. Who you will hear from in this book to help give us that education about our bodies and various aspects of our health. What they say is all their patients have come to them with like, until I have felt unseen. I have felt ignored. I have felt like dismissed. And I do have hope, like clinicians like them, the ones that are in my book, and also others, like they do want to work with us. They do want us to feel like the good ones do want us to feel like they can help us, And so I think it's not all doom and gloom, but it is on us to really find our people, to find the ones who we feel like, oh yeah, you get me. You're listening to my symptoms and you have a plan for me that I'm on board with.
I totally agree. I think that's the assignment.
Yeah.
For every woman listening, that is the assignment.
Yeah.
You have to take ownership of the future you. No one else is going to step in and do that. That has to be your job. And I think it's great that you're advocating for that kind of awareness and action from women.
Absolutely. I mean, Maria Shriver often says, as women, we have to become the CEO of our own health. And when you think about that, the big CEO energy is confident. If I don't know the answer, I'm going to get the answer. I'm going to find it. It is very much like, I'm going to take the reins here and say, okay, this is where we're going. And I think we all as women can do that. Sure. Should we have to? Would it be great if we were working within a system where we felt like that was a little easier? 100%. But we're working with what we're working with. And so it is incumbent upon us to really take control. I loved a friend of mine who's in marketing. When she saw my book cover, she was like, the new rules of women's health. She's like, I love that, because ladies, we've been letting other people make the rules for far too long. It is time for us to make new rules that work for us. And I think really the rules look different for all of us, right? You've got different health concerns than I do. You have a different past than I do. And it's really important for us to give airtime to what we've been through, what we're feeling right now, and then create those new rules that we want to follow, that will help us feel our best, and also break some old rules that don't work.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I love that spirit. I think that's exactly right. And in that, what would you say, coming out of the process of writing this book, what do you want women to trust about their bodies?
Your intuition is speaking to you. Man, like if you have that sneaking suspicion that something's a little off, listen to it. In this culture where we can often be told nothing to worry about, no problem, that's not good enough. If you feel like something is off, travel down that road and until you meet people who will really help you feel seen in that. Because, as women, a lot of times our symptoms are a little more subtle than male symptoms. Certainly when it comes to heart attack, for example, the man gets this crushing pain, arm pain. For women, oh my goodness, it can feel like, you're a little more fatigued, you're a little nauseated, and it's just like, you might have this intuition that something is drastically wrong when the world might be like, you're a little nauseous. What are you going to do about it? And I think we know our bodies.
We do. We absolutely do. And I think that's such a mic drop answer, because we are such huge advocates and fans of helping women reconnect with that intuition here on the show, and not just reconnect with it, but learn how to listen to it again and feel like you have permission to do that, even when it feels challenging, even when it feels like you might be rocking the boat, even when it feels like it's not what everybody else around you is doing, right? Like, give yourself the permission to listen to yourself and actually explore what that means for you, to your point, Meghan. And I love that advice. I love it.
Yeah. And what comes to mind right now too is like, this conversation has been so much fun because it's reminding me that even though I am about a year, almost to the day, after my hysterectomy, and I feel great. And
Congrats.
Thank you. Yeah. I feel like a new person in a lot of ways. I'm feeling inspired to get out that electric blanket and like to carve out some time to get back on the couch to deeply rest, as I think the way, I'll speak personally, the way I'm able to really listen to my intuition is by slowing down, by getting on the couch or into bed early, and not reading something or listening to something or watching something. It's like, just be quiet, and can I climb in and really get curious about what's happening? Because I think it's a hard thing to do in this go, 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 get everything done culture we live in. But I think for me, that's the secret to really being able to listen to what my intuition is saying is quieting down, you know?
It was the secret for me too, and so many other women who have been on this show. And ultimately, I think that's what a lot of the practices we talk about do. They give you access to that quiet again, where it feels so inaccessible some days, you know?
It really does. Like, I'm wondering, and I'm a journalist, so I always ask a ton of questions. So you can tell me to pipe down if you want to. But how do you personally find like those hits of quiet? Like, is there something that helps you throughout the day? Because it's really hard to do, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I make it a point of waking up before the world. And by world, I mean my house, my kids, my husband. I wake up and I have about an hour to myself. And yoga, first thing, 15 minutes, 10 or 15 minutes, not for exercise, just to move energy and remind myself that I live in this body. And it's a gentle way of loving myself to start the day. And then I try to get outside, and I don't listen all the time to podcasts or music. I really listen to nature. And sometimes I just, I don't know, listen to a song or meditate or get on a bike. Or I'm a huge fan of warm yoga, but whatever I do in the morning is for me. It's to remind myself that I'm in my body and that this time is however I want to use it. And if I need it throughout the day, my heroes and healers have given me so many ways to access that quiet when I need it, whether it's deep breaths, whether it's meditation on, if I'm going through a challenging time, I do what you've done. I call my Rolfer or my myofascial release specialist. I go to church. I pray. I love praying. Prayer, I pray 30-second prayer every night before bed. And then there's one that I love saying when I'm out walking or just driving to a yoga class, but it just grounds me. It reminds me what's important. And once I remember what's important, that quiet comes a lot faster and a lot easier.
It sounds too like you don't make it a big thing. You interweave, you weave it throughout your day and you don't set like high standards for it. Like I think sometimes what I do is I'm like, oh, if I don't have 30 minutes for my breath practice, I can't do it. Whereas like actually I could do it in 30 seconds if I didn't set this bar too high, It's like I think that's another practice I want to pull in this year is like a little bit is better than no bit. Right.
Yeah, but that's the muscle, right? Is like in the middle of a busy day when you've got a call in 5 minutes and there's so many things you want to do in those 5 minutes. It's like, what's really going to help me right now? Okay.
Totally.
Yes, I want to fold that laundry or whatever it might be, or like get that email out the door if you're in an office. But like closing my eyes for 2 minutes, like that's going to reset everything and make everything from here on out more enjoyable and more peaceful. And I would never have listened to myself before because like you, I'm like, that's not enough time. Like I need to have blocks of time to get these things done. And I think I've just learned that getting those 2, 5, 10, 15-minute blurbs whenever you can squeeze them in throughout your day. And some days you may get that only 5, and then other days you'll have an hour and a half. Who knows, right? But you just do what you can and like be grateful that you have the awareness to know you need it in the first place, right?
That's so powerful. Yeah. I love
That's
that.
your intuition speaking. And when you listen to it in small ways, oof, you learn to listen to it in the big ways too. And that's when the real magic unlocks. That's you step into your purpose. And I know there's like a lot around that, but whatever that is, what brings you joy, like you'll find that if you learn to tune inward. But it's not these big light switch moments. It's these little things we're talking about. It's taking the 2 minutes out of your day when it's the hardest to find, but doing it because you know you need to, and just giving that to yourself. That kind of commitment grows over time and becomes a much bigger practice. So that would be similar to what you're saying. It's baby steps. It's the small things that over time, in isolation don't look like much, but then a month later you look back and you've meditated for 200 minutes that month.
Yeah.
And you're like, wow, go me.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. And you can trust yourself more then, right? It's like I've
Yeah.
decided I set a goal to do this and I actually did it, even though it might have been less time, but because it was regular, it's like, yeah, I think that's the kind of thing that just makes you trust yourself, right? And like, oh,
Yeah.
I do what I say I want to do, right? I love that. Yeah, yeah, like I said, I want to pull out that blanket. It's like my healing blanket.
I love it. I mean,
Yeah.
for me, it's a gravity blanket, but now I'm wishing I had a gravity blanket that heated up.
There is something so soothing, isn't there, about that the warmth, especially in the
Yeah.
wintertime, you know?
Giant
Like
hug.
it
Giant
is.
hug.
I know.
But what you're saying is so important too about the self trust. And we've done full conversations around that because once you trust yourself, you do trust your intuition and you can do the things that you were able to do along the way. You can meet with multiple practitioners. You can ask the tough questions. You can challenge the status quo, right?
Yeah.
But that happens when it comes from a place of trusting yourself. And, I think it all works together. So
100%.
love that.
Yeah.
What's one belief about women's health that you'd love to see shift?
We're kind of the same as men, just with a few different parts.
Mm.
I think we are finally starting to talk about this. Women are not small men is a phrase I think all of us have heard now.
Dr.
But
Stacy Sims.
a big bingo. And I don't know that we really know all the intricacies of what that means. You know, we're hearing a little bit more about how our exercise needs are different than a man's, and how even if we go into a sauna or a cold plunge, that should look different than how our the men in our life, what they need. But I think it spans further than that. It is our brains are different. Our hormones, the way they change at different parts of our life are so vastly different than our male counterparts. And we need to know that and be able to talk to our healthcare providers about that fact.
If a woman listening feels dismissed, confused, or overwhelmed maybe by the medical system and whatever she's going through at the moment, what would you want her to hear most today?
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry you feel that way, you know, and it's not right. And you deserve great care. Keep track, keep on listening to your intuition, keep track of your symptoms, write them down, and however you can, however it looks for you, keep looking until you find the people who are your posse, your tribe, and maybe that just starts with one person and then leads to that person telling you about another person who can help you. But your symptoms are worthy of airtime. You deserve to feel cared for.
I am very moved by that answer, and I'm grateful for you and for your time today. And just thank you for your honesty and your vulnerability. I think it takes so much courage to, first off, live these stories, but then also tell them to the world, which is exactly what you're doing. And I am so glad that Maria gave you this assignment and that you accepted it with open arms and put so much love and personal passion into it. I really am just so looking forward to reading this book. So thank you for today and for everything, all of your work.
Well, thank you. And I feel like, thank you for what you're putting out into the world, because by giving women like myself a platform to talk about topics that used to be pretty taboo and that still hold a lot of shame, that's how we start to break through that. Another really common thing I heard from so many of the wonderful experts that I interviewed for this book is that one of their biggest hopes is that we can drop the shame. We as women can drop the shame we feel about our bodies. Like, from the breast oncologist who told me that she sits at the bedside of dying women dying of breast cancer, and they apologize to her for not shaving their armpits or wearing deodorant. The female urologist who hands women a hand mirror when she does exams so that her patients can see their vulva. And these women are cringing, saying, I don't want to look. How could I possibly look? That's shame. That's shame outright. And the more we can talk about this, the more we can just drop the shame and talk about all the things and feel seen. Feel seen and feel heard. I think this is how we change things. So thank you.
Oh, well, thank you for saying that. And it's just, it's really, What you're doing is so important. So thank you again for being here. And to those listening, thank you for joining us today. If you like what you heard, please follow the show and share it with a woman in your life. You can visit healingheroespodcast.com to meet the heroes and for more information or to request guests and new topics for us to cover in future shows. Thanks for listening, everyone. And remember, be curious, be courageous, and be kind to yourself. You've got this.